Good morning, friends, and welcome to worship at St. Andrew. I'm Justin Bullis, the Director of Production and the Online Worship Experience, and it is my privilege to welcome you here today. We are so grateful that you've chosen to join us here on our YouTube channel for this alternative, abbreviated worship experience. Welcome to this sacred online space where you are invited, included, and valued as a vital and beloved member of our worshiping community. Please take a moment to check in at gostandrew.com/sign-in to let us know from where or when you happen to be joining us. While you're there, you can use the online form to let us know if you have any prayer concerns or questions about our church. If you would like to explore deeper engagement with the work God is doing in and through the St. Andrew community, you can email us at connect@gostandrew.com. We would love to hear from you. As Reverend Mark reminds us every week, St. Andrew is an open, affirming, inclusive congregation that welcomes saints and sinners, believers and skeptics, the lost and the found, the wanderers and the wanderers, families of all shapes and sizes, and people from every point along life's journey. No matter who you are or where you've been, no matter what you believe or even if you believe anything at all, you are welcome here and you belong here. So now, Reverend Mark will bring us the fourth message in our Lenten series, 40 Days of Forgiveness.
When Joseph's brothers saw that their father was dead, they said, "What if Joseph holds a grudge against us and pays us back for all the wrongs we did to him?" So they sent word to Joseph, saying, "Your father left these instructions before he died. This is what you are to say to Joseph. I ask you to forgive your brothers the sins and the wrongs they committed in treating you so badly. Now please forgive the sins of the servants of the God of your father." When their message came to him, Joseph wept. His brothers then came and threw themselves down before him. "We are your slaves," they said. But Joseph said to them, "Don't be afraid. Am I in the place of God? You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good, to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives. So then don't be afraid. I will provide for you and your children." And he reassured them and spoke kindly to them.
As we continue our 40 Days of Forgiveness series today, I want to remind you that every journey of forgiveness is unique and deeply personal, because every experience of trauma or betrayal is unique and deeply personal. There's no one way to forgive because, as we all know, there's more than one way to be hurt. Some people know a depth of pain in their lives that others will never experience or comprehend, while others have been hurt deeply in ways that some might consider a rather trivial offense. For some, the pain emanates from personal relationships, and their question is, how can I ever forgive that person for the harm that was done to me? But for others, the hurt is more systemic, generational, existential even, where whole groups of people wonder, how can we ever forgive what's been done to us or what's being done to us? Ukrainians that are fighting for their nation, Palestinians living under occupation, Jews who survived concentration camps, people of color whose ancestors were enslaved, indigenous peoples whose lands were stolen. You put it all together, you realize forgiveness is complex, it's multifaceted, and maybe in some cases implausible. So together we fumble around for clues for how to do it, trying the best we can to piece it all together. Some of those clues, as we have seen so far in the series, include resisting the human impulse for revenge, revealing our shadows and reconciling with our true selves, remembering that we live daily in the condition of divine forgiveness. And today we uncover another clue that helps us on our journey of forgiveness, and that is reframing the past. Whenever we've been hurt by others, the wounds can be deep and enduring. It can feel like life will never be the same again. In some cases, that's painfully true. But in every experience of personal pain, our future life will turn on this one question: can this painful experience be transformed into something that will bring about a better future for me and or for others? We have a choice in how we respond to what's been done to us. We have a choice in how we'll make sense of or frame our past so that we can live a better future. We have an opportunity to transform our pain into something that can become redemptive for others. In every experience of pain, there is this raw energy that remains ready to be used. We can turn that raw energy inward upon ourselves in unhealthy ways until it ultimately consumes us. Addiction, isolation, anger, rage, bitterness, self-defeat. Or we can turn it outward and leverage it for something good. Pain, as we know, pain is the most compelling catalyst in life. Years ago, I read about a 33-year-old Venezuelan man. His name was Carlos Camejo. Camejo had been in this very serious traffic accident. Declared dead at the scene, his body was transported to a morgue in Caracas. Medical examiners began performing this autopsy on him, and soon after they made the first incision, they discovered something was terribly wrong. Camejo said, "Ouch." That's one way to ruin a perfectly good autopsy. Camejo, it turned out, was very much alive. In an interview days later, he said, "I woke up because the pain was unbearable." Pain is a compelling motivator. It can wake us up. It can call us to our senses, inspire us to make life changes, prod us to rise above our circumstances. What did Rocky Balboa say in his final boxing match? Rocky's about 110 years old. He's completely washed up. But he climbs back into the ring one last time and says, "The world ain't all sunshine and rainbows. It'll beat you to your knees and keep you there if you let it. But it ain't how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward." That's inspiring, isn't it? Rocky, by the way, lost that fight. "It'll beat you to your knees," he says, "and keep you there if you let it." And we all know the truth of that. Just look at Joseph in our story from Genesis today. The world beats him pretty hard. And it's a wonder he even pulled himself up off the mat. Joseph is a very unlikable character, by the way. He's one of Jacob's 11 sons, but Scripture says that Jacob likes him best of all. And Joseph knows it, which makes him extremely self-assured and annoyingly narcissistic. Joseph keeps having these dreams that tell him that he's going to be kind of a big deal someday. And so he tells his brothers, he says, I'll conquer the world someday, and all of you will bow down and serve me, and, oh, by the way, Dad likes me more than you. And Joseph he won't stop bragging about himself. So one day, his brothers call a meeting. What are we going to do about the Joseph situation? One of the brothers proposes they kill him and drop him into an empty well. Reuben, another brother, suggests that they just throw him into a well and let nature run its course. Judah comes up with an even better plan. He says, maybe we shouldn't be so harsh on Joseph. I mean, he is family after all. So let's do the right thing. Let's sell him into slavery. That way he gets to live, we get the cash. It's a win-win. That's what they do. And it's a terrible story. Betrayed by his brothers, sold for 20 pieces of silver, left essentially for dead. But it gets even worse. Joseph is hauled off to Egypt, sold a second time to a man named Potiphar. Potiphar's wife later falsely accuses Joseph of putting a move on her, and for that, Joseph spends several years in jail. It's an awful story. It's an awful story about the terrible things we do to one another and the terrible things we endure, even at the hands of those who are supposed to love us the most. Joseph isn't the most likable guy, but he doesn't deserve this. Anyone who's ever endured unnecessary pain at the hands of another can understand Joseph's plight. Most of us can endure the short-term aches and pains of life, but there's another kind of pain that runs much deeper. It's the pain that settles within the human soul. The world will beat you to your knees and keep you there if you let it. It's that kind of pain. It's true. And it hits some people harder than others. What do we do with our pain? We can bury it, numb it. We can deny it, run from it. We can let it consume us. But what if God invites us to treasure that pain long enough for it to become a source of creativity and compassion for others? What if we allowed that pain to become part of us, to integrate that pain into our future life story in healthy ways? Frederick Biegner, the great writer and former minister, has written about the story of his childhood. He was speaking at a retreat in Texas one day where he described a painful experience that he had as a young boy. He was 10 years old, and his father had come home after having had too much to drink. His mother didn't want his father to take the car, and so she took the keys and gave them to little Frederick and said, "Don't let your father have these." And Frederick was in bed. He hid the keys under his pillow. His father somehow knew that Frederick had the keys. He begged his son, "Give them to me. I've got to have them." Biegner said he was so frightened. He was sad, listening to his father pleading, "Give me the keys." He pulled the covers over his head. He finally fell asleep with his father's voice in his ears. At that retreat, when he finished telling that story, a man approached him afterward and said something for which Biegner was completely unprepared. The man said to Biegner, "You've had a fair amount of pain in your life, like everyone else. You've been a good steward of it." That phrase caught Biegner off guard. He said, "To be a good steward of your pain?" And ever since, Biegner says, he's thought a lot about what the stewardship of pain means, the ways we deal with pain. Besides being a steward of it, there are alternatives. The most tempting, of course, is to forget it, to hide it, cover it up, pretend it never happened because it's too unsettling to remember. But what does it mean to be a steward of your pain? Perhaps, says Biegner, it's having the courage to see that pain can become a treasure if we treasure it to the point where it can become compassion and healing, not just for ourselves, but also for other people. It's at those moments of pain where we are most aware of the pain of others, where we are most open to our own deep places, where we are aware of our own powerlessness, but also most aware of God's power to pull us through it. to be with us in it, and God's power on the other side of it, to use it for purposes that can heal not only ourselves, but also others. The word we often use to describe the stewardship of pain is resilience. Resilience is the emotional and spiritual capacity to bounce back from adversity and to use the wisdom gained from that adversity to adapt to new challenges and trials. Resilience is like a muscle that contracts during good times and expands during difficult times. The only way to develop resilience is through hardship and pain, which is why Nietzsche famously said, "That which does not kill us makes us stronger." It's why the U.S. Marine Corps today uses the mantra, "Pain is just weakness leaving the body." It's resiliency. It's the power to hold on during difficult times. And it comes from understanding that God doesn't always take us out of our problems, but that God leads us through our problems. God doesn't always take away the pain, but God gives us the capacity to transform that pain into purposes that can be redemptive. Joseph is the champion of resiliency. In the story, while he's in jail, Joseph begins to interpret the dreams of his fellow prisoners. And when Pharaoh learns of Joseph's gift for interpreting dreams, Pharaoh sends for Joseph because Pharaoh has been having some troubling dreams of his own. And Joseph is so good at interpreting Pharaoh's dreams that Pharaoh promotes Joseph to what was essentially the head of Egypt's Department of Agriculture. And suddenly, Joseph, the former slave and prisoner, becomes the second most powerful man in the world. According to Joseph's interpretation, Pharaoh's dreams were predicting that a famine was on the way. So over the next 7 years, Joseph helps to store up enough food in Egypt's reserves to survive the famine. And when the famine finally arrives, it's felt all the way over in Canaan, where Joseph's brothers live. When word gets out that Egypt has enough food, those same brothers are sent to Egypt to buy some. That's when the whole story comes full circle. After years of slavery, imprisonment, the loss of everything that ever mattered to him, those betraying half-starved brothers show up on Joseph's doorstep looking for food. In the story, at first they have no idea it's Joseph. But when Joseph finally reveals himself, they're afraid. Who wouldn't be? What will Joseph do to them? I mean, he is, after all, a victim, isn't he? But Joseph doesn't see himself as a victim here. In fact, when he looks at his life, he doesn't see a series of painful tragedies from which he'd never recover. What he sees instead is a series of seemingly random events that somehow, when taken together, begin to form a compelling purpose for his life, for his future. To an ordinary person, those painful experiences would look senseless and random, just one meaningless tragedy after another. But to Joseph, those experiences, they seem to form a pattern. And from that horrible day when his brothers first sold him off, to the years working as a slave in Egypt, to the 2 years in Pharaoh's prison, to this very moment now standing right here before his brothers as one of the most powerful men on the planet. When he put all that together, what he saw in that moment was how his painful journey had shaped his life into an instrument that God would and could use. It wasn't that it was all preordained. No. It was just that it had all ordained him for this crucial moment in history. Joseph could see that God had saved him so that he could one day save his brothers. In fact, save the entire Jewish nation. That day had finally come. And Joseph says this to his brothers. He says, even though you intended to harm me, God intended for it to be good, in order to preserve a numerous people, as he is doing today. God does not cause hardships to happen, but God will never waste them. God gives us the courage to use them for good purposes. We all have pain. We all have problems. The people who get up off the mat are those who possess a resilience born of faith. The Apostle Paul, he once put it this way. He said, we are pressed on every side by troubles, but we're not crushed. We are perplexed, but we are not driven to despair. We get knocked down, but we're not destroyed. Paul faced his own pain, actually. He called it a thorn in his side. Many scholars have speculated about what that thorn might have been. A physical condition, depression, a disability, maybe. But could it have been a person? Someone who had hurt him? Have you ever referred yourself to someone as a thorn in my side? Paul tried to run from it, but God said, no, my grace is sufficient for you. For power is made perfect in weakness. And so, the Apostle Paul got off of his mat, and he kept moving forward in his life. Power is made perfect in weakness. Something redemptive can come out of brokenness. Even though you intended to do harm to me, says Joseph, God intends to use it for good. I recently heard from someone from our online community here at St. Andrew. She's been worshiping with us online for well over a year. She's an extraordinary, accomplished artist. Her work is beautiful, deeply resonant, tender, real, breathtaking. She shared with me recently about her childhood trauma, the years of therapy, the love and healing she's found through competent therapists. She said, my therapist tells me that it's amazing what God gives to little children so that they can survive and thrive their horrendous childhood. The ability to be hypersensitive, hypervigilant, to be able to read the room, to look at people and know what they're thinking. She said, that's me. But her therapist also told her what I believe Joseph tells us in our story from Genesis today. That we don't have to live our futures as victims. That while life after trauma might never be the same again, there is indeed life and meaning and purpose beyond the trauma. There is a good, life-giving, redemptive future. She said to me, many of us who live through trauma go on to be either therapists or creatives and artists. And she said, I am the artist. Joseph said it this way. Even though you intended to do harm to me, God intends to use it for good. today's takeaways. We each experience pain in uniquely personal ways. We can choose to be good stewards of our pain. When we become good stewards of our pain, God will use it for a higher purpose.
Every time I try to make it on my own, every time I try to stand, I start to fall. And all those lonely roads that I have traveled on, there was Jesus. When the life I built came crashing to the ground, when the friends I had were nowhere to be found, I couldn't see it then, but I can see it now. Well, there was Jesus. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing, in the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been or where I'm going, even when I didn't know it, I couldn't see it, there was Jesus. For this man who needs amazing kind of grace, for forgiveness and at a price I couldn't pay. I'm not perfect, so I thank God every day. And there was Jesus. There was Jesus. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing, in the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been or where I'm going, even when I didn't know it, I couldn't see it, there was Jesus on the mountain, in the valley. There was Jesus in the shadows of the alley. There was Jesus in the fire, in the flood. There was Jesus, always is and always will. No, I never walk alone. You're always there. In the waiting, in the searching, in the healing, in the hurting, like a blessing buried in the broken pieces. Every minute, every moment, where I've been and where I'm going, even when I didn't know it, I couldn't see it, and there was Jesus. There was Jesus. There was Jesus. There was Jesus.
Hi, my name is Jamie Martin, and I'd like to tell you about our upcoming 7th annual Big Serve event. This is a time for us to connect in community and serve others. We are looking forward to joining together to lift up and love on our neighbors. It will be amazing to reconnect in person with organizations we haven't been able to these past couple of years, such as Urban Peak and IFCS. And we're excited to partner with new friends like Heavy Hands, Heavy Hearts, and Project Our Town. We have nearly 40 opportunities to choose from. We will be cooking and serving meals, cleaning, painting, planting, cleaning up our parks, packing activity bags for sweet kiddos who are sick, and so much more. Regardless of your age or your skill level, if you're serving by yourself, as a family, or with a group, we have something for you. This year's Big Serve will take place on Saturday, April 30th, and registration opens today. We have a team of incredible volunteers that will be in the atrium following the service. They are eager to answer any questions and to help you get registered. If you're joining us online, no worries. Our catalog, list of partner organizations, and registration can all be found online at gostandandrew.com/bigserve. If you have any questions or need help registering, please contact outreach at gostandandrew.com. There is something incredibly beautiful and inspiring about this day together, and we would love for you all to be a part of it. Thank you.
And now, as you return to the rhythms and routines of your lives this week, may the beauty of God be reflected in your eyes, the love of God be reflected in your hands, the wisdom of God be reflected in your words, and the knowledge of God flow from your hearts, that all might see, and in seeing, believe.